demographic. Thank you, Dee. So I just want to do a bit of a review. So people can raise their hands. If you don't raise your hands, it's just more of me talking. So it's more fun if you raise your hands or you jump in, but whatever you're comfortable with. So this is just a review from session 1. Why is marketing important to growing a small business? I hope we all know the answer. It's going to drive people in. It's going to drive sales. It's going to actually help you grow your revenue. All the most important things for your business. Marketing is key to them. So anyone who did the homework, how did you delineate your target demographics? Does anyone want to volunteer? I don't want to cold call because that's scary and I recognize that.
But we're a small group, so we're a kind small group.
Yeah, we're a kind small.
That can also give you some pointers.
Yeah. Okay, well, I am trusting that everyone delineated their target demographics and personified them and has been walking around town thinking, what would X do? Depending on what you named X, which is what I do with my target demographics all the time. And then that you've thought through what your social media channels might be that relate to your target demographics. So we went over those 2 things last time, how to decide on your target demographics and then how to choose social media channels that directly relate to those demographics. So today is about reaping digital marketing rewards. And if you'll remember the sessions that we talked about last time, today we're going to start on section 6. Social media content creation, which I think is is a really jazzy section. We're going to talk about posting frequency and timing, which is a question I get a lot. We're going to talk promotion. And then we're going to talk about ads and when paying for views makes sense to you, which is a question I get all the time. So it might feel like last time we didn't talk much about social media and that we're just focusing on it now, but we're not starting at the beginning because in order to really fully leverage social media, you need to understand your target demographic. And through that, you need to decide on which channels are appropriate based on that target demographic. So once you understand those 2 things from this starting place, we're in a position where we can discuss in the context of the expansive nature of social media platforms. So given the, I think, 500 million people on Instagram, for example, how do you get in front of the eyes of the people who actually want to see you? And once you get in front of their eyes, how do you ensure that the content that you're creating is compelling enough to inspire them to act? And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you get in front of the right people that you've decided are your target demographic? And once you do that, how do you inspire them to act through your content? Now, it might seem kind of counterintuitive, but we're going to do this in reverse. So first, we're going to talk about content and how to make that compelling. And once we have the content and the channel and the target demographic information, we're going to talk about how to get those pieces in front of the right people. And the reason for doing that is because your content and your target demographic dictates how you promote the content to reach your target demographic. So it's a little bit reversed, but I'm hoping it all comes together in a clear picture and you're all become social media influencers by the end of the year. That's my goal. So today we're talking about kind of some of the major platforms. So we'll talk a little about Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. But I do want to flag that there are other social media platforms that are really relevant, including TikTok, Twitter, and Snapchat. If you are targeting a younger demographic like teenagers, TikTok and Snapchat are big social media platforms for you. And if that's something that you want resources on, you can write to us or write to me, and I'm happy to provide you with resources. It's just that most businesses right now are focusing more on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I know that there was some interest in Pinterest, so I wanted to bring that in as well. Twitter is also a big social media platform. I don't want to diminish that. It's used in a really different way. And again, if that's a social media platform you have more interest in, I'm happy to provide additional resources. I should say, I am not an expert in TikTok. It's the one social media platform I feel really anxious around, but I do have resources I can give you, though I wouldn't consider myself an expert in it at all. So let's talk content creation. So how do you make content that inspires action? This is the question on everyone's mind. How come some people become social media influencers and the vast majority of people are unsuccessful in that endeavor. The internet is filled with people who would like to be social media influencers, but somehow are not kind of striking the right chord. But creating relevant content and compelling content, and then having it be seen by the right people is what marketing is. That is what marketing is all about. So this piece is incredibly important. This is my favorite marketing quote, if you're a marketing nerd, and it's engage rather than sell. And that's big on social media. You don't want to just be selling, selling, selling. And if any of you are consumers of social media, you know that when you see things that feel like they're sales over and over again, you tend to get really worn by it. If the page you're following just bombards you with calls to spend money, that might not feel very good to you. But if you're a co-creator and you're really working to kind of create that content with the people that you're selling to, they'll be much more likely to be on board with you and start building a community, which is what social media is about. So this is my favorite content creation quick tip. So we're going to go into some other tips that are really important, but this is the most important one. And it's the 80-20 rule. And what that means is that 80% of your content as a small business should not be selling. It should not have a call to action of spending money. It should be about educating. It should be about informing, about entertaining, about creating that community. And then 20% should really be about selling. And this seems really counterintuitive. The idea is if you put more advertisements out there, you'll sell more. But the truth is that people get really tired of advertisements. And that's not really what, especially if you're following a page, what social media tends to be about. It's much more about community creation. People tend to unfollow pages that are kind of pure advertisement and tend to engage more with pages that are engaging more with them. So is there any questions about this rule? Because this is really critical and it makes social media way more fun. I find that like a lot of the small businesses I work with, they don't want to be creating ads all the time. They want to be talking about their artwork that they make. They want to be talking about sustainability if that's where their organization is. They want to be talking about some of these bigger, different tangential or very relevant issues. And they should. Social media is a good place to do that, and that won't diminish your ability to sell to those people later. Okay. So now I have some kind of quicker tips I'm going to go into. So when you're thinking about content, you want to keep it short. People don't have a long attention span on the internet. Keep it to under 1 minute, always. That includes text or videos, what have you. They should be able to consume your media in less than a minute. You want to remain genuine. So you don't want, I mean, it's easy to say don't be boring, but what does that mean? What's boring to one person is not boring to another, but people always value other people being genuine. And that means being vulnerable, and that means not being perfect. And that's something I'm going to come back to again and again. I come up against a lot of clients that don't want to do social media because of the work it takes to make it perfect. And if you're working so hard to make it perfect, it's not going to come off as genuine and it's not going to be effective. So do yourself a favor, do your clients a favor, do your business a favor, and post all of the warts, all of the things that go wrong, all the things that are funny, all of the ugly pictures, post them because it will actually make people want to engage with you more. Mix up the medium. So if you don't feel comfortable taking pictures, or maybe you don't like video, think through what creative things you could do. How can you create a video or a slideshow or something interesting? I have a lot of clients that use Canva. I really think Canva is a great tool, and it also is free for small businesses of a certain size. But even the paid plan is actually really, really cheap. I think it allows you to basically, for those of you that don't know Canva, it's just like an online tool that allows you to create social media content. And I'm happy to include that as a resource. Focus on motion. You should be posting videos. The only situation where you shouldn't be posting videos is if your channel is Twitter and you can't post videos, but you should be posting videos. We are entering into a new age of digital media consumption where we consume visually. That's why Instagram has taken off while Facebook's numbers kind of have stagnated a little bit more. It's because we are more comfortable consuming pictures, we're more comfortable consuming videos, but pictures can say a lot. but videos can say exactly what you want them to say because you are the creator. So make sure that you're mixing up the medium and including videos. I have a lot of clients that feel uncomfortable with this. It doesn't have to be a video of you. Be creative about it. Maybe it's a video of your hands making something. Maybe it's a slow motion of a ball of yarn if you're a weaver. Just be creative about your videos, but make sure you're including them. Stay on brand and focused. I know you're very bored of me saying this, but you need to refer back to your target demographic. Who are they and what would appeal to them? Who's speaking to them and why would they find it relevant? So if your target demographic is 16-year-old boys and you are a 35-year-old woman speaking to them, why should they listen to you? Maybe you should find a 16-year-old boy who can speak to them or a 22-year-old man who can speak to them. But think through who's speaking to them, why they find it relevant, and what type of tone and voice you want to use on your social media. And that kind of akin to that is being really language conscious. So you want to be thoughtful about the words your audience relates to. So I mentioned that I worked in Tanzania previously. When we created ads, we didn't just create ads in straight Swahili. We created ads that really used a lot of slang because we were appealing to younger people who use that slang. So if we just used kind of like textbook Swahili, what's taught in schools, that wouldn't really relate to them. So you want to be thoughtful about what words are being used. Think about the platform. So each platform has a different identity. LinkedIn's really professional, kind of buttoned up. Instagram's fun and visual. Facebook is really about connection. And Pinterest is really focused on kind of visual beauty. So sometimes it's easy to have content on one versus another. And you should modify your content based on the platform. Now, if you are new to social media and you do not want to have accounts in every platform, that is okay. And you can also have linked accounts. So your Instagram can link to your Facebook to make things easier. When I say think about the platform, it doesn't mean that you have to do bespoke posts for every platform, but just be thoughtful about where you're posting and who you're appealing to. If you get bored of making your own content, you can repost other people's content. That is totally fine. Give credit to the people. If it's tag them and make sure that you're not just kind of stealing their content, but it's great. It's good for them. It's good for you. It means you don't have to create a bunch of content yourself. The proper etiquette is to give them credit. So make sure you're doing that. But beyond that, that's all you have to do. There's no like copyrighted. I get that question sometimes. You don't have to worry about that. Just make sure you tag them. And you should be kind of like cross-pollinating with other Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest accounts.
Ray, can you just quickly talk about tagging when you say tag them? So everybody's clear about that.
Yeah, so tagging means that you basically you are referring to them in the written content. So for example, if it's on Instagram, you basically write out their Instagram name so people could click on that name and then see their page. So you're not just taking credit for yourself, you're also saying that this person created this content. And it doesn't need to be so direct. The language can be whatever you think it should be, but make sure that you're giving them some credit there. So I'm going to come back to, this is going to be my mantra, just like target demographics from my mantra last time. Don't let the perfect stand in the way of the good. The requirement of things being perfect make people dread posting. And whenever I talk to clients about social media, the thing that I've never heard someone be like, I'm really excited about my business social media. No one has ever said that to me. Someone told me that it makes them feel sick to their stomach to think about it. People have told me that they do the laundry instead of doing it. They do everything instead of doing it. And it's because of a variety of reasons. But one reason is that they don't want to put something into the world that's not fully representative of their brand and themselves. And I understand that need. I think we all have that innate need, that fear of putting something into the world that doesn't represent us. But the truth is that the flaws do represent us. And if you're trying to put something flawless out there, that is also not true, and it's not going to be relatable to people. So when you have a picture that you're like, the lighting isn't great, still put it up. because not posting is much worse than posting pictures that aren't at 1,000% filtered beauty. I do want to talk about Instagram stories because they are taking off right now. So for those of, does anyone use Instagram stories on their social media right now? Good, great, okay. I'm a big fan, Davina, I like it. So for those of you that don't know, Instagram stories are basically kind of vertical photos or videos. They're up to 15 seconds and they disappear after 24 hours of posting. They're not displayed in the feed. They're displayed at the top of an active user who's logged in, and you can tap through them. The idea behind stories is that they disappear in 24 hours, but you can pin stories. So if you have a tutorial on something, you can pin it to your page so that people can go back and reference that tutorial later. And in that way, it can kind of become part of your overall Instagram life. So they're a super effective tool. They provide more insight into the day-to-day of your business and brand. And it means that you can really engage with your followers more. So instead of it being a one-way situation where you're just showing them things, they're giving you some feedback back, which is really critical. And it's part of that building that community that I talked about earlier. So it's not just about giving them information, it's about receiving feedback from them. And that's one of the reasons that I think they're so useful. So stories have really evolved over the last few years. Since they started out, which I think was in 2015 or 2016, the number of actual Instagram posts has decreased. And that is because people are using stories more and more. It's becoming much more of a storied platform. So they provide an opportunity for businesses to interact directly with their audience. So you can do this in a variety of ways. The first is through polls. So you can see on this first picture, this person is saying, what would you like to see next? And they're running a poll. And then they can show the results of that poll and then do basically what that poll has dictated. So I've had some people for shock value say, should I cut my hair to this style or this style? Do a poll. If you're a small business, if you're starting your small business, I have a client who is moving into her new space for her business, that she's her storefront. And I said she couldn't decide on the paint color, and she mentioned that offhandedly. And I said, you should run an Instagram poll on it, because get people excited about your business. How cool is it to go into a store that is painted the color that you chose? That is a really extreme feeling. And that makes you more inspired to support that business. So you can also use emojis. And those emojis mean that you can ask people a variety of things. So on this second picture, this is asking, the first thing that they ask is a poll: what kind of skin do you have? And then what benefit do you want? And then they can react to the basically results of this poll and kind of emoji scale to provide information back. So it's a two-way conversation. You can also do questions. So kind of like an ask me anything. And then you can respond either on stories itself, or you can respond by direct message, but it's a great way to have kind of back and forth with your direct customers. And you can do countdowns. So if you're going to launch a new product, do a countdown, get people really excited about it, have them work with you. Stories are also a great way to boost sales. So you can say, here's a pearl necklace I'm selling, then you can link to it, which is a great way to really bring people into your products. Finally, they offer an opportunity to bring more people to your page. So hashtags are something I'm going to talk about later. But what I wanted to mention with stories is that on a regular post, hashtags are very visible. Even if you kind of like hide them at the bottom, they're still there. But on stories, you can actually make hashtags invisible. So you can just change the text color to the color of the background, and then nobody knows your hashtag is there. Or you can make the text super tiny and cover it up with an emoji and nobody knows it's there. And all of a sudden your story becomes more findable by a variety of people, but that's not interfering with the visual of the story itself. So before we move on from content creation, this was a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions? Because I know this was a lot.
Yeah, Ray, I'm just curious, what is the benefit of hiding the hashtag? Is it just that it's unattractive and it gets it off the screen?
Yeah, so some people have very firm ideas of what they want their visual to look like. And so you can feel free to leave the hashtag in the story if that's what you want. But if you want for example, if you're a photographer and part of your artwork is what you're showing, you might want that hashtag to be very small and you can kind of hide it in a corner somewhere. So you can resize it, you can recolor it, whatever you want to do. So here I have an example where they're kind of in the process of recoloring the hashtag to match the background so it would be invisible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also have a question. Oops, go ahead.
I wanted to know if you use the special Instagram related apps for any of this. I know that a lot of it isn't, but I like using Instagram, but I find myself sort of at sea when it comes to doing anything complicated, like people are posting series of slides that you swipe through.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't got a clue how you do that.
Yeah, so I can actually send you some resources that will really walk through how to create kind of different types of Instagram posts and also include this information in your stories. It's not an additional app. There are apps that you can use that modify pictures, etc. So you can post to Instagram in a different way, but this is not this is actually included in the Instagram app itself. There are also something we'll talk about in the next session are social media schedulers, which would allow you to schedule some of these posts early, which is an additional app too.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to read a question that's in the chat. I've always used Instagram as a search platform, not to promote content. How would I start using it in advertising my content?
Ooh, love this question. I'm going to wait to answer it because we're getting into the promotion next. But if you don't, whoever asked it, if you don't feel like I fully answer it in the next kind of like 2 sections, then let me know. But this is exactly the question I want to answer. Excellent.
Great. I had a question about, at one point you said that you could email someone or you could talk to them offline. So in Instagram, are you getting their email or only if they're giving it to you?
Only if they're coming to you. You can't email someone, but what you can do is direct message them through Instagram.
Oh, you can.
So you can direct message, that doesn't mean email. It just means that through the app, they'll receive like a message notification and you'll be able to basically have like what it is similar to a text conversation over Instagram.
Right. So if you wanted to communicate with them directly, you'd do that and then you'd switch over to something else if you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say that increasingly, there are demographics that do not use email. They only use in Instagram chat. I know college students now are no longer exchanging like phone numbers. They exchange Instagram handles and that's how they communicate. So it's a new world of social media these days. A lot of times that's a space where people feel most comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware of that when you're communicating with people, that for many, the idea of exchanging an email feels very personal, whereas an Instagram like in message or social media in message does not.
Sure. And also because you can't read the chat, right, Ray?
No, I can't. I'm sorry.
Also, what about Reels on Instagram compared to videos and stories? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, great question. So Reels are really, they're different than stories. And they basically are kind of video content that could be longer than stories. So they allow for tutorials, etc. You can promote them in I can actually send some information. I'm not sure who asked that question, but I'm happy to send more information about Reels. You can promote them in a slightly different way than you would stories or posts, meaning that your audience can be larger. But again, you can hashtag them similarly. So you're getting a similar experience in terms of the promotion. So the promotional piece still holds true. Basically, the benefit of Reels over stories is that they can be longer. Stories have to be cut to 15 seconds, but Reels can be significant amounts of time. So you can do tutorials and you can allow people in a bit of a different way.
So I think when we finish, will everybody should get all that information, Ray, the different links and stuff. And then, if it's too much for someone, obviously you don't have to read it, but then we all feel like we have the information on how to do things if we need to.
Definitely. And I'm really happy. That's a great question. I'm really happy to include more information on it. I had to be very judicious in this presentation because there's so much to cover.
Sure.
But if you're specifically interested in that, I'm also happy to hop on like a 15-minute conversation with whoever wants to talk about Reels. Okay. So posting frequency and timing. I get a lot of questions around this. When do you post? Often and always. However much you're posting, I guarantee the vast majority of you are not posting enough. Creating relevant, convincing content and then placing it in front of those people who are most likely to find it relevant is the crux of successful marketing, meaning that you have to do it in a time that they will see it. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So in general, it's recommended that you post 4 to 5 times a week. Some brands post 4 to 5 times a day. But I recognize that when you're starting out, this can feel like a huge mountain to climb. If you're going from 0 to posting 5 times a week, that is overwhelming. So focus on a goal that you feel like is attainable. If in the first few weeks you just want to post twice a week, that's fine. And that is a success. But you should know that the goal is to kind of move up to 4 to 5 times a week if possible. And that speaks to what I kind of talked about earlier, that these posts don't have to be perfect, because if they do, that's a lot of your time that you're going to take developing these posts. Many people fear that if they post too frequently, that people will get really turned off by their content. And to that, I have a few responses. The first is that if you're following the 80-20 rule, where you're not just bombarding them with sales information, they won't, because you'll be providing interesting, relevant content that they want to be consuming. But if you're just bombarding them with sales, then posting 4 to 5 times is a little bit too much. The other thing that I'd say is people go on social media and scroll through social media a lot. So I think there was one study that found that people who use Instagram go on 35 times a day. And they scroll and then they're done. They scroll, they look, they scroll, then they're done. So people are updating constantly on these platforms. Very rarely do people catch up with all the updates, meaning that in the sea of the 400 people that they follow, if you post 4 to 5 times a week, that is appropriate for not getting lost, but it's not going to be bombarding them. You're not going to be overwhelming them. They're likely seeing kind of like 1,000 posts a week. So 4 to 5 can be yours. So the question then becomes to schedule or not to schedule. I am a big fan of social media schedulers. Sometimes, not always. So if your business is starting from scratch on social media, there's no reason to get a scheduler yet. You really want to work on just figuring things out and creating posts and trying things and seeing what works and seeing what's getting engagement. If you feel like you don't have a lot of content, a social media scheduler is not for you. In those situations, you'd want to try to post organically and in the moment. If you read an article you like, post about it. If you see a beautiful scene, take a picture and post it. It doesn't matter. You are part of your brand. So if you are, for example, a glass blower and you see a beautiful landscape, you can still post that to your professional social media. That is still appropriate because it is part of how you are seeing the world. And you can bring it back in the whatever you write about it, you can bring it back to your artwork, but it's still appropriate. I do think social media schedulers like Hootsuite, and there are a couple others that I would recommend, can be really useful in ensuring you're posting frequently enough. So if you're someone who has a largest social media following, maybe a couple hundred followers or something along those lines, and you know that you're not posting frequently enough to maintain them, you should consider getting a scheduler. It also depends on the way of working. So I'm someone who likes to check off boxes. So I would way prefer to like create and put all my posts in a scheduler and then have them mailed out, like create them all at the beginning of the month and not think about it, and to have to think about it every 2 or 3 days. So if that fits your personality, then think whether a social media scheduler is right for you. For schedulers, you can use them for both posts as well as stories, and you can have all of that information in one place. So it can make it a little bit easier.
Can you just
yeah.
review a little bit the different types of schedulers? I mean, not 100 of them, but
Yeah.
and also price-wise, there's some free ones, right?
Yep, there are a couple of free ones. So this is also, I'm just going to write down that I want to include some of these. There are quite a few free ones. And the way often the free plan works is if you have fewer than X amount of followers, or you're posting at X frequency, you can use the free plan. Canva includes a social media scheduler. So if you're making content already there, that's something that you should think about. Hootsuite is the most common one. And it has different plans, and I'm 90% sure Hootsuite has a free version. But there are other ones as well that I'll email out and kind of do a slight comparison for you. So you can pick the one that's right for you. If you're going with a free scheduler, I recommend going on it and playing around. This doesn't have to be a black and white thing. So you can really play around and see what is a right fit for you. And usually you'll end somewhere in the gray area where you use a scheduler 1 month and then you forget to do it. And then you realize you should be posting. And it's kind of like everything with a small business, where as you move through it more, you get more organized in terms of what works for you. The one thing I will say is, even if you choose to go with a scheduler, please occasionally post anyway, yourself without the scheduler. Keep things a little bit organic and a little bit more day to day. I think we have a hand raised. Louisa, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, thanks. In terms of if you're what percentage of your posts should be sales related, as opposed to, so that's one question, as opposed to just getting yourself out there and building your brand, how many should be trying to make a sale? And the other question is, if you're posting also from another Insta, I have 2 Insta accounts, if I'm tagging my business in the other one, is that just as good as posting it from my business name, if that makes any sense?
Interesting. So do you mean, let me address your first question first.
Okay.
So in terms of how much of your business post should be sales related, it should be about 20%. So it's lower than most people think. 80% should be education, fun, brand related things, letting people kind of have a look into your life, but it should not be necessarily related to sales. But 20% of your posts, you can say, I have a great special going on, or enter this code, or check out my new line here, etc. I think check out my new line here could actually be in the 80%, because it's just kind of a fun thing to do. But definitely keep 80% of the content really fresh and not directly asking for people's money. I think that's the delineating line. In terms of your 2 social media accounts, I would use, if you're promoting your business social media on your personal account, which I do recommend, if you have contacts, it's no secret to them that you have your own business. So you should be promoting it there as well.
Yeah.
You should be tagging your business so that people can follow it, but it's not necessarily as good as also posting. You should be doing both, I guess is what I'm saying. So if that post is appropriate for your social media account about the business, I bet it's also appropriate for the business. And so you can use that post for the business as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Okay. When to post? I really hesitated on even creating this slide, because the truth is, post when you can. You're going to hit different posts and figure out what works. You're going to hit different demographics at different times of day. So people who work full time, you would think that they are not looking at Instagram while they're working, but they are. Some people look at it right before they go to sleep. Most people are looking at it throughout the day. So if you look at, for example, when to post, it says in terms of channel on Facebook, Tuesday to Thursday, 9 to 2 p.m. That's a broad range. What it's basically saying is like weekdays during work hours, which is why I don't think that this is necessarily super useful information for small businesses. I did want to put it here just so you can look at your area and see what's interesting to you. But I do want to say it's useful to try a couple different times and see what works. See where you're getting more reactions or more likes or more views, etc. And then kind of work off of that. But if you choose to only post one time during the day, as in like if you are only posting at 4 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, you are missing out on a lot of people. So instead of creating a consistent schedule, create a purposefully sporadic schedule. So you're hitting a lot of different people at a lot of different times. And that feels counterintuitive to people because I say post 4 to 5 times a day and they say, okay, I'm going to post every day at 2 p.m. Don't post every day at 2 p.m. because the same people are on their lunch break at 2 p.m. and are scrolling through things at that time. And you're missing this whole other demographic of people that maybe only look at 11 p.m. Okay, so before we move on to promotion, which I know there were some questions about, does anyone have any questions about the frequency or timing, or even going back to the content piece that we covered earlier?
I have a little bit. Oh, Davida, you have a question? Great. Okay, I'm going to read Davida's questions. I have a few accounts, personal, business, and specific project, and I struggle to make enough content for each, and also struggle with possibly integrating them all in one account or not.
Yeah. So that makes sense because if you have many accounts, one, it can feel weird if you have the same followers to post the same content. And then 2, it would be a lot more stress to create 3 rounds of content versus 1 round of content. I do recommend consolidating your business accounts into one if possible, especially if they're all related. So if you have 2 vastly related unrelated businesses, like you have a crafts business and then you are in real estate, do not combine them because it's weird and you have very different target demographics.
Yeah, and hers are very different.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's good specification. Yeah. I would not necessarily recommend combining them. I do think that Davida, even though you might have vastly kind of polarized different businesses, there are creative ways to combine them. It just takes a lot more nuance and you have to think through how that's going to be. And Davida, I think I know what businesses you're talking about. So maybe you and I can talk offline about it, which might be really useful. I understand why it would be difficult to manage so many different Instagrams, and I don't recommend it because what will happen is that each one you will post really infrequently. So if there's a way to bring people from one account to another account and to have one business related account, that would be best. I do recommend having a separate personal account. And if you want to, no pressure. If you're not into Instagram yourself, don't do it. But I would not recommend kind of combining those two, the personal and the business. And that's because the things that you might want to post on your personal account should remain personal. And if you grow your business following to 2,000 people, you might not want to post pictures of your kids or something like that you might want to post on a private personal account. So just kind of weigh these different considerations.
Great, thank you. Right. I also want to give a little bit of a heads up about content creation, because what I have found with working with people in Canva is that, just like any software, it takes a little while to kind of get in there and, oh yeah, now I remember how to do this. And then you create, something and then you're like, wow, that was great. But really, you should create 6, 8, 10 posts right there. Okay, because you can create one post and then maybe you like the graphics of it, but you're going to change the words, or you change the words and you put maybe a picture of something else in there, part of it. So it just creates, it helps make things easier in that then you can have that bulk of ads all set to go. So I suggest doing that, for content also, for, written content or pictures. Just try to manage them all together. Then you have almost a palette of things that you can choose from when you're actually posting. So,
Yeah. I think,
So,
I
oh,
think that's a
sorry.
really good point. I think that the sweet spot is a real combination. So a sweet spot is being very intentional about how you kind of conceptualize your social media calendar, but then also leaving wiggle room to be organic.
yeah,
And to
absolutely.
be like something interesting is happening. My dog just did a backflip. I'm going to record it and like post it, so like to leave room for that kind of interesting interaction. But I do think, when I was working for a larger social marketing firm, what we did is we created the content like the 15th of the month before, and then the proper people looked at it, edited it, and then we would roll it out on basically a sporadically timed scheduler. And that was because we wanted it to be planned. I recognize that that doesn't work for everyone. So based on your personality and kind of your ability, I think you should lean into what kind of systems work. But I think what you're saying, which is really well received, is that things like Canva, you do have to relearn it a little bit. It's like Excel. If you haven't worked on it for 2 months, it's going to be a little bit harder. So in order to decrease the amount of time you're using, make several posts at one time instead of one post at a time.
And also, if you're a person who dreads the social media a little bit, it lessens that if you can, make them all set to go and then schedule them, and then you kind of know you're good for a while. I actually worked for a company where I did their social media, and it was, and I reposted a lot from different periodicals, and I made the content all in advance. And then I felt like, whew, okay, done for the month. And then it lightened me up to get content from them that I could post just, whenever that came up, whenever they gave that to me. So it wasn't that every week I was thinking, oh dear, what am I going to post this week? Or now I have to, figure that out. It just made it easier.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and also what I find is, everybody who's in business, like it or not, you guys have a lot of content. And so creating folders, files, however you do it to manage that content is great, because then you can just go to a place, look for it, keep it there for sure, because guess what? You can reuse that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Dee's right that you have, regardless of what business you're in, you have a huge amount of content. And there are so many non-glamorous sides to owning your own business. Can be not a glamorous pursuit sometimes, but letting people in on the lack of glamour can sometimes be part of the process. So being like, doing a story and saying like, today, I'm not able to make my art. I'm making a spreadsheet and it's really boring and I really don't enjoy it, but it's part of this process. And I'm really excited to get back into my art in a few days once I clear this away. And if there are any commissions, let me know. Just like letting them in on that process too.
I think you said at the beginning, Ray, that, people are interested in the operations of a business. Like what really happens behind the scenes. I mean, I had a garden center, and, one of the things that people really were fascinated about was when I got a plant delivery. I had to have 15 to 20 people there. The truck pulls in. Everybody has to know exactly where things go, how to label them, how to manage them. And then we've got to get that truck out of there in less than an hour. Bing, bang, boom. And people thought that was so fascinating. And as well, it advertised that I had new plants happening on the scene. So it was an effective post in a couple of ways.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think, for example, if you're a photographer, show people, like, give people a little tutorial about how like your single lens reflex camera works. That is really interesting to people and they don't know, or give them a tutorial about how you think about a shot, etc. So letting them in behind the scenes on your expertise can be really exciting for people. I'll never be.
We do like, we,
Yeah?
show the weight of like the food waste when we like bring it to the farm and like
Oh,
do the weigh, the weigh-in of how much that week's food waste for, each town.
oh, that's
How much
great.
of like, so that's a good one, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
So like, yeah, so
I
like,
love that.
just so, and then we try to with like a lot of like our high customers who are like really into it, just kind of been like, your food waste this week was, this much, like 20 pounds or like,
Yeah.
things like that. So
I think
yeah.
that's so great because it also allows people to feel like they're part of a team.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all about
Yeah.
creating, it's kind of what I talked about in the beginning about like creating that community. Like they are now contributing to something and they're seeing in real time the rewards of that creation.
Yeah.
So including them in that, I think you could do so much with stories, for example, and polls and those types of things about how to make it easier for your customers and how to give them what they want. So that's a great example. Yeah. Okay, let's talk promotion. So how do you promote your content wisely? So your goal in content promotion isn't just to reach as many people as possible. Because if your goal is to reach as many people as possible, you might be reaching, your target demographic could be kind of like 45 to 55-year-old men, and you're reaching all, women ages 18 to 20. You could be reaching the totally wrong people. So it's not just to reach everyone, it's to reach the right people. The goal is to reach as many people in your target demographic as possible, to create opportunities for kind of more profitable action. So the first thing you want to do, and I think this is important to say, because a lot of people hesitate around this, you want to leverage your own network. A lot of small businesses kind of shy away from this, or like they're not willing to, they want strangers to like their page, not their friends. But the first person to like your page will be your friends. It might be your mom, etc. Because that's your initial network, and that allows you to expand outward. People who know you personally are more likely to follow you closely, support your business, and amplify your message. So you have to take into account that you're not just sharing your page with them, they might be sharing your page with others. So it's a really important amplification process for you. And there can be a call to action with those friends as well, saying, not just can you like my page, but can you support it by asking your followers to like it too. This can be kind of socially difficult or uncomfortable, but remember that social media has different social expectations. So an acquaintance that you're Facebook friends with might be actually open to you talking about your business with them, though they might not be open to you talking about your kids with them. So there are different kind of social expectations there. Use your own personal networks, so your personal pages. And to launch your business, you can also direct message contacts and ask them to follow your business. So for each, then there are more organic mechanisms. So not only should you direct message people and say, please follow my business, but often on like platforms like Instagram and Pinterest, if you like people or follow people, they're likely to follow you back. In certain circles, I just want to flag this, that it's a trend that definitely happens. And I think some people on this call have experienced it. In certain circles, what happens is that you like someone who's similar to you. For example, my mom is a potter. She makes beautiful ceramics, and this is true. And she follows a ton of potters on her Instagram. That's what and a ton of potters follow her. Now, those potters are not, they're liking her, all of her posts, but they're not necessarily purchasing her work. Because there are a lot of kind of in-groups on Instagram or Pinterest where artists in that area like other artists who use that medium, but which is good, but you also want to expand outside of that. So think about, if you are a potter, what other medium do you appreciate? Maybe you are ecologically focused and you want to follow some environmental groups, and that opens the door for some types of collaborations, et cetera, or them leading people to your page and vice versa. And I say that because my mom is currently doing that after I told her she had to. So I think that just think through who you're following and why, because although those follow backs are good in terms of your numbers, they might not be good in terms of your sales. So it's fine to follow more, if you're an artist, more artists in your field, but also think, who else can I follow that is relevant tangentially or directly to what I'm doing? Next, I really want to talk about hashtags. This is one of my favorite parts of the presentation because I found this really lovely picture of this cat. I'm not actually a cat person, but I am a mustache person, so I'm loving up about this part. So Instagram and Facebook, and increasingly other social media platforms like Pinterest, for example, allow you to use hashtags to promote your content. Hashtags connect posts that have a common theme in order for people to easily search them. And I want to make sure that there aren't any questions about hashtags before I move forward, because this is really important. What this means is that if I hashtag something, if I'm eating an apple and I take a picture of it and I hashtag it apple, people who follow the apple hashtag, my apple will be one of the apples that they see on their feed because they follow that hashtag. Also, if people search the hashtag apple, they'll see my apple in compilation with everyone else's apple who's been posted. Now, that could be Apple products, there could be iPhones there, but it also could be just a slew of Macintosh apples. So if someone clicks on it, they'll see all tagged posts. If someone follows a hashtag, they could see your hash post on their feed, even if they don't follow you, as long as your account is public, which, as a side note, all business accounts should be public because you want people to find you. If you hashtag a story, it could be included in a relevant hash story that people would follow. So I'm going to move on to kind of like how to create hashtags, which I think is really important. But before that, are there any questions on how people on different mediums use hashtags? Okay, good. Okay, so my first hashtag tip, if your business is brick and mortar or it's localized, you want to zero in on the local market. People love following their local hashtags. And I have a feeling that especially in Western Massachusetts, where there's a big focus on kind of local businesses, that a lot of people are following local hashtags. So use hashtags to differentiate where you are and help your neighbors find out about you. For example, Northampton, probably there aren't that many people posting with the hashtag Northampton hashtag, meaning that your posts are more likely to stay on people's feeds longer because there aren't that many posts to replace them. But that being said, I'm sure that a lot of people actually follow that hashtag because they want to know what's happening in their neighborhood. Oh no, my beautiful hashtags that were supposed to be here. Now it's just looking like it's just a cat, but there are hashtags that are supposed to be overlaid on this cat to illustrate what I'm saying. So let's go back for a second.
Oh, no.
So with my beautiful cat in Northampton, I would hashtag him if I run a pet grooming business, for example, and maybe this isn't even my picture, but I want to promote my business. I would hashtag it, hashtag Northampton, hashtag Northampton pet grooming, hashtag Northampton animals, hashtag Northampton small business. So on the inverse, you can also use broad hashtags to reach a large audience, and you never know who you'll reach. The thing about social media platforms is they're global. So you have people following hashtags in Indonesia and in Atlanta that are the same hashtags. That creates a really interesting opportunity to connect with people who are potentially in your business or in your sphere of work who you don't know about, who are leagues and leagues away. Simultaneously, you want to use narrow hashtags to target your demographic more intentionally. So if there are fewer posts on the hash, it's going to stay on someone's feed longer. So if I hashtag something, hashtag apple, my apple will be among millions of apples, and soon it will be replaced with another million apples. So that replacement is going to happen really quickly, and that will happen with broad hashtags. So for example, if I hashtag this picture, cats of Instagram, which is a huge hashtag, it will show up on many people's feeds very quickly, and then it will be replaced with other cats because so many people are hashtagging cats of Instagram. But if I hashtag this picture, hashtag Catio Mustachio, for example, very few people follow that hashtag / no one. But if say 4 people follow that hashtag, this would stay on their hash for a long time because there would be so few posts to that hash. If you search a hashtag on Instagram, you see how many posts use that hash. So you can see here, I have hashtag bakery, 13 million people, 13 million posts have that hash. But hashtag NOLA bakery, which is a specific bakery, 10,000 people have that hash, 10,000 posts. So you'll be able to see how many posts that hash has. I recommend aiming for hashes that have between 10,000 and 100,000 posts. If you're going into the 13 million posts, your posts are going to be replaced really quickly. That doesn't mean that they're not worthwhile, or that contextually it might be useful, but the 10 to 100,000 post is kind of the sweet spot. Are there any questions about this before I move on?
Yes, when you post something, how many hashtags would you say are good to put on that post? And, you know, 1 million is a great answer, but it's wildly unrealistic.
Yes. Well, you're reading my mind because that I think is my next thing. Yeah. Okay. So you can hashtag up to 10 hashtags on a story and 30 hashtags on a post. There used to be a stigma against hashtagging more than like 3 hashtags. Like when Instagram first came out, if people did that more than 3 hashtags, they were like, too many hashtags. This is gross. That stigma is no longer. What you can do is you can hide your hashtags. All you need to do is create multiple spaces between the text of the post and the hashtags, and then your post will basically condense and just your text will be able to be seen. So I do recommend hashtagging pretty broadly, meaning that no amount of hashtags that's allowable is too few hashtags, because all you're doing is allowing more people to see you. That doesn't mean you should spend 45 minutes each post thinking of new hashtags. There are some hashtags which your specific business might always use. If you are a candle maker, you have certain hashtags that you know you'll be using. Hashtag local candle maker, hashtag Northampton candles, etc. So there are some hashtags that will be true of every post you do. And then you might have a hashtag for a specific post that's hashtag pumpkin spice. So think through what your hashtag should be, but don't spend forever on it. There are ways to hide them, as I mentioned. You can also put them in a comment on the post if you don't want them in the post itself, and that still allows people to find your post. And I don't know why this got cut off, but on stories, you can make them invisible, as I talked about earlier in the presentation. So any other questions? I recommend to clients that they come up with a list of standard hashtags that's usually about 15 hashtags long that they use on every post, but then that they leave a lot of space for bespoke hashtags based on the post content and to have fun with them. It's okay if you have a fun hashtag that very few people see. Maybe very few people see it, but it will be a real hit with your target demographic specifically, and you get some new followers from it. Hashtags can also be, there's a humor to them. So sometimes they're included in the post itself. If you think that that's kind of a funny or cool way to do it, that's totally acceptable.
See, this makes me happy because my daughter tells me I'm hashtag happy. So you just proved my point that I'm okay with the hashtags.
Yeah,
so, okay.
You have total permission to be hashtag happy. Yeah, there's not too many to use. The time of judgment. Maybe instill the Gen Z people are kind of a little
yeah, she's 13, so like
that tracks. But now it's widely like accepted that you can use as many hashtags as you want.
Thank you for that.
Okay. And now I want to talk about social media ads. I'm going to be presenting a ton of content on social media ads, just because I want to get it out there, and also because this presentation is being sent to you, so you can look it up. You can kind of sift through it a little bit later. But I wanted to make sure that I went through the differences in social media ads across different platforms, and that I left some space for questions. So if it feels a little crammed, it's because it is. But if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands or jump in. So I'm just going to jump into Facebook ad. Actually, before we do that, I want to talk about ads in general. I get a lot of questions about social media ads, and I get a lot of trepidation around it, and that's really understandable because if you have a small budget, sometimes social media ads are not the way to go. You can achieve a lot by kind of building your content in other ways, or by, for example, getting really great pictures taken, etc. That being said, social media ads can be very effective, and often you're paying for what you get out of them, meaning that if you get a certain number of clicks, you pay a certain amount of money. So you know that there's a direct result there. What is true across platforms is the better you target your social media ads, the cheaper and more effective they're going to be. And that harkens back to our first discussion about target demographic. The better you're able to target these ads, the less you'll have to pay, and the more you'll get paid for them as a result of the activities. So as we go through, I'll explain kind of how that works, but I did just want to make sure that as you're designing the content of these ads, keeping your target demographic in mind is really critical, because the content and the effectiveness of the ads will make it cheaper for you and make it more rewarding for you. So there are three main categories of Facebook ads: online sales, local stores, and mobile app ads. Within these three, there are dozens. So these are just kind of the overall categories. I did want to talk about page posts. Page posts invite you to like a page, learn more, or shop now. And they're the most common type of ads, and they are the ones that appear directly in the user's feed. So we have an example here of Optimizely that's appearing directly in your feed as you scroll through. Local stores, the ad appears a lot smaller, so you can tell that it's an ad. So it has a visual difference, but there's also a slight price difference to accompany it. You are able to target your Facebook ads on certain demographic kind of pieces. So location, you can't necessarily target to a city, but you can also often target to a state. Gender, identity, likes and interests, relationship status, workplace and education. But the way Facebook is going to work, and how a lot of social media ad work is going to work, is that they get better at targeting your ads as the time gets on. So Facebook basically learns what identities of people are responding best to your ads and will iteratively target people based on that. So for example, you can see here that you're not able to target Facebook ads based on whether someone's pregnant or not. However, if you have a product, for example, like a breastfeeding tutorial that's seriously targeted toward people who are pregnant or who have recently had a child, Facebook will learn that over time and start searching for indicators in their posts, etc., that fits that demographic and will target that demographic more effectively. This is creepy. It's a creepy part of Facebook, but it's the reality of how we're targeted. And that's how you get stories of people who, you know, basically like said they wanted something and that shows up on their Facebook feed. It's not because Facebook is listening to them. It's because the targeting is that extreme that they're able to see, oh, this person has posted about yard work 3 times in the last 2 months. They'll probably want this type of pruning shears. And this person fits these demographic types, and that demographic type has been really open to pruning shears in the last month. So that's how it's happening. It learns over time. So the cost of Facebook ads is variable. The average cost is 97 cents per click, meaning that if you have an ad up that says like my page or visit my website and they click on it, it's going to cost you around 97 cents. Now, why do I say it's variable? It's variable because there are different things that will influence the cost. The first is the campaign objectives. So are you looking to reach a lot of people? Are you looking to get them to like your Facebook page? Are you looking to get them to visit an external website? The second is the audience size. So the larger your specified audience, the less it will cost. And this seems counterintuitive, but what it means is that you're not targeting it as effectively, so they can send it out to whoever they want to, and it's going to cost you less. Your daily budget will also impact the cost per click. And by that, I mean, if you have a higher budget, it will be cheaper for you. Because what that means is that the algorithm is able to learn more quickly what type of person to target. Also the click-through rate. So the more successful your ads are, the cheaper it's going to be for you. And that's why all of this comes into play here. The content you're creating, the target demographics you're choosing, because the more effective they are, the cheaper it's going to be. And finally, seasonality. Honestly, they're more effective at the times you think they'd be, they're more expensive at a time that you think they'd be more expensive, which is really around the holiday season. There's also not just cost per click, but also something called cost per impressions. So CPM is the number of people who see your ad. So as they're scrolling through their feed, the number of people who just see it, they're not clicking on it, but they're seeing it. The average cost in Facebook for 1,000 impressions is about $11.50, which means that it's pretty cheap to get people to see your ad. But that doesn't mean that they're actually acting on it. So if your ad is not targeted correctly, they can see it. Maybe the same person can see it 5 times, but that doesn't mean that it's going to result in any benefit to you. So to lower cost, understanding your target audience is key. Also, something that Facebook does, which I love, is they provide A/B testing options. And that means that you can run 2 ads simultaneously, and from their metrics, figure out which one is more effective and cost effective for your campaign. So take advantage of this. This is really important. And it allows you to more cheaply basically get results.
And you do that right on Facebook's platform when you're posting the ad?
Yeah, you do. So basically you have the option to choose A/B testing, and basically you're rolling out the same ad to the 2 different ads to the same audience. And then you're getting metrics back based on how many people saw it, how many people clicked on it, how many people engaged with it, etc.
Ray, on your previous slide, if you could go back there, I thought you were able to target different population, different age groups also. Is that not true anymore? I mean, I know
Yeah,
things change all the time.
so you can target different age groups. I'm not sure about the age ranges. That should be on here as well. But I'm not, they actually provide, so it's not one specific age, but it's age ranges, and
Yes.
you can do that.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you for catching that. Okay, before we move off of Facebook ads, are there any questions about this?
I have a question, and maybe it's just me. The last couple of times I've tried to go onto Facebook to to actually do an ad, it didn't allow me. And I'm wondering, something must have changed within Facebook. And do I need a different type of account now? I'm not sure.
So do you have a business Facebook account?
I think I do. I mean, yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what could be going on, Linda. Maybe we can touch base about it.
Right.
But it should be allowing, I mean, Facebook, to be honest, Facebook updates it's how it does ads on like every 6-month basis. They change it, which is difficult. They used to allow different types of filtering. People got freaked out. And there were a lot of calls for it to stop, which were justified. And now they don't offer that anymore. So they do change how it's done pretty frequently, and they also change the interface pretty frequently. But if anyone's having trouble, I'll put also in my list of things to send kind of a tutorial about how to access that part of the business Facebook.
All right, isn't there a Facebook Business Manager part and then the regular Facebook part?
Yeah, so if you don't have a business Facebook account, you won't be able to access Business Facebook Manager. But if you do, you should be able to. But sometimes if people have personal accounts, it can get a little bit confusing. So Linda, let's touch base about it, because sometimes things get a little bit messed up on the back end, or like one thing is wrong and then it's really difficult to access.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk Instagram ads. Many type of Instagram ads, just like there are many types of Facebook ads. When choosing the right type of ad, think about your audience, your goal, and do research into what similar businesses are doing or what's been successful in the industry. So I want to talk about kind of image and video these are kind of all what they sound like a little bit. So image ads, you'll see as you scroll through your feed on Instagram, they'll just come up as though they were a post, but it does very clearly delineate it as an ad. Video ads are similar in that they're coming up on your feed, but they're a video. And carousel ads mean that it's several pictures that you're swiping through, but still on your feed. Stories ads are really interesting because they come up between people's stories. So as you're clicking through stories, there's usually an ad break between two different people's stories. And that's when you'd see an stories ad. What's nice about a stories ad is it fills the whole screen, and you have to look at it. And it happens organically, so it's not like they're opting in or opting out of it. When you're thinking about content for Instagram, consider that 40% of people view Instagram with the sound off, which means 60% view with the sound on. So you should be thinking about how to make both your ad palatable to people who are not experiencing sound. So do not make it reliant on sound. But simultaneously, if you can add some jazzy sound in the background that is nice and not obnoxious, that can be a really positive thing. Louisa.
I know I could easily Google this, but I don't want to look at that right now. Does Canva offer like soundtracks and other like sound effects that you can use when you're designing something?
That's a really interesting question that I do not know. I don't know the answer to.
Okay, I'll make a note and look it up later.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish that I had an answer for you.
No worries.
You know what? I think they do, and I think it's very new.
Yeah.
I remember hearing something about that like within the last month or so. But yeah, Canva is really stepping up. I got to say, they're linking with all sorts of different programs, and I know they're linked with Constant Contact now.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they.
Yeah. I it's funny. I've been paying for an ad called an app called Word Swag, which has been great. And I just kind of feel like Canva is just becoming this sort of more ubiquitous presence. So yeah. Anyway, I'll check it out.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have an answer to it. I would be surprised if they didn't, because it seems in line with their like organizational goals.
Yeah, sure. And in the chat, Althea put in mixkit.co has a lot of free for commercial sounds, music, video. That's really a good reference. Althea, thank you.
Great.
Okay.
The one thing I do just want to speak briefly to Canva, because I think it's a phenomenal tool, so easy to use, creates really beautiful things that are like aesthetically very pleasing. The one thing I will say is that I'm a little bit concerned that they're following kind of the mold of MailChimp, which was that they basically offered a ton of things for free, got a lot of people really hooked on those things, and then started charging pretty high prices for them. So I'm not trying to necessarily give a word of warning, but do keep your brain open to kind of open other options as well. Because sometimes we hear MailChimp, we think that's the only option, but there are actually a lot of options out there. And Canva is an example of one that's been really successful. Yeah, thank you, Louisa.
Sure.
So similar to Facebook, you're able to target Instagram ads by a lot of different metrics, and Instagram will learn who's best responding to your ad. And similar to Facebook, your cost will be impacted by how well your ad is doing. So on Instagram, the cost is the variability is pretty high. So on Instagram, ads are highly variable. So you can pay as little as 20 cents per click, but you could pay as much as $2 per click, which is super high. It has a slightly cheaper cost per impressions than Facebook at $6.70. Different factors influence the Instagram ad costs. Those include the bid amounts, so how much you're willing to spend. So basically what you do is you put in kind of a range of what you're willing to spend per bid. Now, what that sounds like is like, of course, I put it in the lower end of the range because then I won't have to pay as much. But it doesn't really work out that way, because that could mean that you're getting people who are less interested and you're not as well targeted. which speaks to the ad relevancy score. So the amount that within your bid, the amount that they're going to charge you is based on how relevant your ad is. So if people are scrolling past your ad, or if people are trying to hide it from their newsfeed, that's bad. That's going to make your ad relevancy score go down. So this speaks again to the content and the targeting. You really want to make sure you're targeting correctly and that the content is appropriate for your audience. Competitiveness in your industry. Some industries are far more competitive and thus just end up being more expensive. And again, seasonality. Instagram allows you to set up a draft campaign in Ads Manager and look for the audience definition and estimated daily results modules. These will tell you if your budget settings will sufficiently reach the number of people that you want it to reach. This is a huge opportunity because basically what it's doing is it's allowing you to kind of test out your ad internally for Instagram. And they're telling you, if you want to reach this many people, this is how much it's going to cost. Now, it's not exact. It could be slightly wrong, but they have so much data, just millions and millions of people, that these estimates are pretty good. And this will also allow you to better target your ad, because if it's expensive for you, you should rethink your ad content, or you should rethink your target demographic. I do want to say also that Instagram can be variable and more expensive, but they boast the higher click-through rates than other social media platforms, all other social media platforms, and they result in sales of a higher price tag. So meaning I think the average amount that someone spends from like clicking on an Instagram ad and buying a product is like $65, which is very high considering the range of products that are sold off of Instagram ads. So it is, if you can master it, the rewards will be great. But keep in mind that you want to develop your skills so that you're not spending too much money in the process. Is there any question about this before I move on? Okay.
I feel like we need a whole course just on Instagram.
I know. I mean, people do take whole courses on Instagram. And I think that there are some online academy courses for that, if that's something anyone's interested in. Though I know you're all business owners, you don't necessarily have time to take in-depth courses. But the truth is that social media marketing is like a really expansive topic. And I will be recommending some courses in the materials that we send out later that will include some of those that would more delve into this issue, because right now it's hard to kind of do a deep dive into each one. Did we have a question in the chat, or am I good to go? Oh, Dee, I think you're muted.
Yep. No, just a couple of comments about YouTube videos and using Canva and stuff.
Okay, great. Okay.
No questions yet. And yeah.
So there are three main types of LinkedIn ads: LinkedIn sponsored update. And that's this guy pulling a shirt across, this first one. And this one looks like a regular LinkedIn post, but it just says sponsored, like this very little thing that says sponsored. So this is kind of the most popular type of LinkedIn ad. There's also LinkedIn display ads, which is the second post to the right here, official Google Glass. These come up as slightly smaller. These types of posts and ads are usually cheaper because they're identifiable as ads. And that's true across social media platforms. So we see that on Facebook, Instagram. If the ad looks like an ad, you're going to pay less for it because ads are more effective when they don't look like ads. And then direct sponsored content, which is this very obvious ad at the bottom from Comcast, which is going to be your cheapest option. So LinkedIn has kind of the market cornered on B2B companies, which means business to business. So people who are selling their services to other businesses, because they have limited marketing options. They can't necessarily, can go to Instagram, but an Instagram ad focused for a B2B business is not going to be as effective as it will be on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you have a lot of targeting options around job title, industry, geography, etc. When does this make sense? If I am selling solar panels to businesses, then I want to target people who are in charge of maybe who are in charge of like environmental social governance at that business, or who are in charge of facilities, etc. So I can target those people based on their job function. You can also do by geography, company size, meaning if your product costs $1,000 to install, you don't want a business that only has five employees. It won't make sense. And age and gender. The cost of LinkedIn ads are really expensive. They cost about $3.50 per click, meaning that the product, yeah, I saw some faces. The product that you're selling needs to be really expensive to compensate for that. And that's why mostly B2B, they're mostly used by B2B companies. I did want to talk a little bit about Pinterest. So there are a couple different types of Pinterest ads. The first is promoted pins, promoted carousels, promoted vids. It's kind of a lot of the different types of platforms do mirror each other in a lot of ways, and you'll see some continuity as I talk through them. Because on Instagram, you have like a promoted post, on Pinterest, you have a promoted pin. It's not so different. Basically what you see to the right is a promoted pin. It means that it's showing up on someone's feed that it's relevant for. Targeting on Pinterest can be by several different metrics, including keyword. And keyword really enables you to better target your customers, because it's not just, it's about the pins that they follow, not just necessarily who they are based on age, gender, demographic, etc. But it's an interest piece, back to that target demographic discussion we had last time. So in general, small to mid-sized businesses can expect to pay 10 cents to $1.50 per click for Pinterest advertising. And the minimum bid for a cost per click campaign is 10 cents. That being said, if you're entering in the minimum bid and your advertisement is not effective, then you won't be getting many clicks at all. Pinterest requires that you bid and budget for ads such that your price is variable based on success. So the more successful your ad is, the cheaper it's going to be. It also depends on your ad placement, meaning who your target demographic is. And this goes back to some industries being more competitive than other industries. So I have some final tips, but before we jump into those, I know the ad piece was really pretty heavy, and I'm going to provide you with some supplemental materials, but are there any questions about this or anything we've covered, from content to promotion to hashtags to ads?
How often do people like I think about like how often should I be paying for ads?
Yeah. That is very dependent on some businesses are always paying for ads. So it depends on your marketing budget. And I really recommend in a small business that you have a marketing budget. So you know how much you're going to spend on marketing, you know how much you're going to spend on social media. And that way you can decide whether that's going to be on ad work, on maybe finding a consultant who can do that social media work for you, which is an option too, if you're not comfortable with it, etc. I recommend that people start small with ads to see what the impact is. I don't recommend that small businesses just say, hey, I'm going to put in $3,000 to Instagram ads, because you're just starting out and it's a process. To be honest, even if I was the small business owner and my specialty is digital marketing, I wouldn't necessarily put $3,000 in, because the process of refining your target demographic takes time. And if you put $3,000 in initially, you're getting the same information as if you put $500 in. So start smaller, and then as you see the impact, grow that budget higher, because you'll be getting more sales off of what you're putting in.
So
but there's no, to your question, Linda, there's no exact like how often you should be doing it, etc. It's when you have a product to sell, making sure that you're advertising it properly. And
Okay,
some small businesses choose not to use ads ever.
right. I just didn't know if there was a percentage of profit made in the business that should go towards.
No, there's no kind of cut and dry. I wish that there was a cut and dry kind of response, but it really depends on the product, because some products honestly require much less marketing than other products. There's a category of products called like fast moving consumer goods, like things that are very price dependent, for example, like toilet paper. That requires a lot of marketing because you really have to differentiate why to buy Charmin instead of like Shop and Save brand, you know? So that requires a bigger marketing budget. Whereas if you have a bespoke product that you're the only one offering it to a very small target demographic, that might require a very different marketing approach.
Thank you.
Ray, I know this is a huge topic, but could you just say a couple words about Google ads versus social media ads and why you might choose one or the other?
Yeah, so Google ads, for those of you who don't know, are the ads that show up right after are basically like sponsored links when people search certain things. So it will say ad, and then it will have the link on the search. There are some businesses that social media does not make sense for, and Google ads can be great for those. I think the clearest example is like therapist businesses. It can be a little bit dicey to advertise your therapy business on social media because a lot of the things I just said would not apply to you. And I have some therapy clients and I'm like, this does not apply to you. That being said, if somebody searches Northampton therapist, it would be great for you to be the first person to come up. So there are certain situations where Google ads make a lot of sense. Google and social media work very similarly in that they are both kind of learning as they go who's more likely to click. If you buy certain Google products, you get free Google ads. And I think it's worthwhile, depending on your business type, to have some time to experiment with those free ads. I think social media, I'm a little bit biased in that I think social media provides more options because you have more control over what's seen. It can be more visual. And also you can promote without ads on social media. Whereas Google, the only way that you're promoting without ads is through search engine optimization. As a side note, I know after our first workshop that there was some questions on search engine optimization, and I sent out some resources to some of those people, but I'll include those resources when I send out a resource list after this workshop as well. I hope that answers the question. I know that was a little roundabout. Great. Let's talk final tips. Okay, going back to what we learned last week, become friends with your target demographics. Do the personification exercise. I really encourage you to. I know it can be annoying, but really think through who are your target demographics and what would they do in different scenarios. The more compassion and empathy you feel toward your demographics, the more effective your marketing is going to be. And I don't just mean empathy as in like sympathy. I mean empathizing with how they would react in different situations. And this, the more effective your marketing will be and the cheaper your marketing will be. It has huge payoffs. So with social media, you're going to get out what you put in. I have definitely worked with businesses that posted on social media for 3 weeks and they're like, I'm not getting any followers. I'm done. You know, they just don't want to do it. They're not happy with it. The truth is that for social media to be effective, you have to put in resources. That means in the form of time, energy, emotional space, learning, or sometimes it means money. And it depends where you want, what you choose out of those things. So if you're willing to put in more time, you can spend less money and still have an impactful social media. But regardless, there needs to be some resource investment. If you don't do that, it won't deliver for you. But if you do, you might be really pleasantly surprised. And what I will say is that it's something like any skill, it's something you get better with over time. So the more you learn about it, the more you invest in it, the better you're going to get, the more effective you're going to be, and the more enjoyable it will be for you. Be conscious of your internal framing. A lot of people build up social media marketing into something bigger and scarier than it is. Like I said, I've had clients say that they were like, felt physically ill at the idea of social media marketing. So really try to bring it down to a level that it could be like entertain the idea that this is something you can enjoy. If you're an artistic person, entertain the idea that this can be an outlet for your art. If you're not an artistic person at all, but you're extroverted, entertain the idea that this could play into your extroversion. Find something in you that relates to something in social media and try to frame it in that way because it will make it easier and more likely that you will post. I'm not gonna go over this mantra again, but remember, it's okay to have posts that have warts on them. And my final tip is to really have fun. The idea of social media is that it lends itself to genuine interactions. There is so much that is painful and wrong about social media. And I'm not here to kind of talk all about those things, but I do want to acknowledge that a lot of press around social media is accurate and there are a lot of problems with it. But we should also remember that social media has led to a lot of beautiful things in the world and has led to people honestly feeling less alone, especially during a time over the last years when we felt very alone. So remember that social media is you're not just selling products, you're really interacting with individuals and you're really creating a community, and that can be very valuable. And if you bring, just like anything, if you bring good intentions to that community will be a positive one. So really try to have fun and make mistakes and be messy about it. And the messier you are and the more honest you are, the more successful you'll be. Great. I was a little late today, so sorry about that. But thank you all so much. It's been really wonderful to have these workshops. And if anyone, I am going to kind of send out some, oh, we have a question, Davida, sorry.
I think she might have had her hand up. I just wanted to thank you very much, Ray. But I also just put in the chat something I want you to know about, and I'm hoping that you are all on our email newsletter. But we've just discovered a resource from Verizon where they are offering several different like a whole series of videos and workshops, and the ability to connect with other people in similar industries. And it's a pilot program for 3 months, but it just looks great. And I just started it earlier in the day today, but I haven't done any of the videos. But there's a whole area on social media marketing. There's SEOs. They're professionally done. They have a little bit of gamification in them. So you take a quiz and then you get your results. And my guess is that Valley will be using those extensively once we learn about them ourselves. So I encourage you to copy that. If you miss it, we can send it in the information, but also we'll be promoting it on the next newsletter. So yeah, it looks interesting and fun. So
yeah, it does. I just sent out a link to our questionnaire that I should have put in before the presentation ended. So please fill it out so I don't get in trouble.
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that questionnaire. Yes, that will really help us with, feedback for future programming also.
Yeah.
So let us know so Ray can do something else for us. She can do another program.
I do want to say, if anyone has questions and they want to contact me directly, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And I'm happy, yeah, that's it. I'm happy to meet one-on-one or to even have a quick chat about any of these topics that you think would be useful. Or if you have a specific question, you can email me and I'm happy to email you back resources. What I'm going to do, this presentation will be sent out to everyone. I am going to request